somehow life went on. Things were happening, all kinds of stuff. But finally, in April of 1945, the Russians were already approaching. They were near. They already occupied Vienna. And we saw these German armies and all that moving westward. So we thought for sure that they would leave us there and we would be occupied by the Russians, and that would be the end. We would be freed. No such luck. They wouldn't leave us there. They took us all and put us on trains again, and they were moving us westward. They were taking us to a camp called Ebensee. Ebensee is not very far from Salzburg, of all places on earth, that is so gorgeous and beautiful. We had no idea. But maybe about 40 or 50 kilometers before we got to Ebensee, the train stopped. The very morning, the Allies, I don't know whether it was the British or the Americans, destroyed that whole railroad structure in that town that was loaded with thousands of German officers' families that they were bringing back from Vienna, because while the war was raging on in Russia, the big shots had their families in Vienna while they were commandeering the war and all that. So they were taken westward back towards Germany, home, and a lot of them were destroyed in that raid. But we didn't very much care about that, but unfortunately we couldn't go forward. So they took us off the train and they started marching us. We were 1,200 in that train, right, on the train group, and took us, I don't know how long, but people were dying along the way. And in front of me was this guy with his father. Somehow got that far together, but the father could no longer make it. And the son started crying. He said, "Dad, please keep trying a little longer, please." Just couldn't. So we had to pull him to the side and keep going. And as the guards that were with us just put a bullet through their heads, and we just kept going. So the whole route was lined with dead bodies. We finally got one morning to Ebensee. We straggled in about 190 of us out of the 1,200. So we were in Ebensee for about 2-3 weeks. We were just lying around, really nothing going on. There was all kinds of stuff that was happening, but we didn't know really, because the hierarchy were already leaving. They were running away, trying to get mixed into the civilian life, into the towns and all that. So the lower people were running it. The crematoria couldn't burn the bodies anymore because people were dying. There was no food to be had for anybody. They didn't even have any food for themselves anymore. So there were mounds and mounds of dead bodies all over the place. They also had a plan before we even got there, that they told the people that were in that camp that, the Americans are approaching and there will be a lot of shooting going on, and we're going to save you by taking you all into the tunnels, because they had these mines, these huge mines there, and going to save your lives. And what they actually were planning on taking everybody in there and blasting, destroying the mounds with all the people in there. But they ran out of time, so that didn't take place. But one morning, I believe it might have been a Saturday morning or a Friday morning, it's not clear to me, is when the shooting stopped. There was a lot of big, heavy shooting, and it was very quiet. And Shimi and I could barely, I was very, very weak. Shimi he was a little stronger. He had some better situation back in Milk than I did. So he was much healthier than I was. So we ran out to the front of the camp. He dragged me, actually, and a lot of people were dragging towards the front because knew something was going on. And when we got there, we saw 3 tanks but they look different than the tanks we saw the years prior. They had white stars on them, and one of the tanks opened up, and a guy came out, and he says, "You're free." Well, we didn't speak English, but frei in German and free, he says, "I'm an American," he says, "American," And then we started hugging and crying and carrying on, and within hours they brought in these field kitchens, and they started cooking foods, stews and all kinds of good stuff. But they begged, "Please, just a little bit. Your systems wouldn't be able to handle that, So just take a little bit at a time." And yeah, you keep a starved animal from food and you got a case on your hands. So everybody ran with buckets and whatever and just shoveled it in, couldn't get enough of it. And unfortunately, many got sick and died. Whether they would have lived anyhow, who is to tell?